In the depths of a remote African valley, where ancient wisdom whispers through the trees, a mysterious white figure moves silently through the morning mist. The villagers speak in hushed tones about its massive size, its incredible strength, and the unbelievable story of how this extraordinary creature came to be their guardian. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. But to understand this tale, we must journey back to the day when fate brought together two lonely souls, forever changing the lives of an entire community. The early morning sun painted the Lumo Valley in shades of amber and gold, its warm rays touching the scattered acacia trees that dotted the landscape like nature's own sentinels. In the distance, the majestic Mount Kilimani rose toward the heavens, its peak often hidden behind a crown of clouds. At the edge of this breathtaking vista, where the valley floor met the gentle slopes of the mountain, stood a modest, mud-brick house with a tin roof that had weathered countless seasons. This humble dwelling belonged to Bibi Amara, known to all as the widow of the valley. Her weathered face carried the story of a life filled with both joy and sorrow, each wrinkle a testament to the years she had witnessed. Once her home had echoed with the laughter of children and the warm presence of her beloved husband, Jabari. But tragedy struck during the great floods 5 years ago, washing away not just their crops, but also her family, leaving her to face the silence of solitude. Bibi Amara's days fell into a quiet rhythm, different from the bustling life she once knew. Each morning, she would wake before the sun, her bones creaking like the old wooden door of her home. She would wrap herself in her favorite kanga, a fabric worn soft with age, its once bright patterns now faded but still beautiful, much like her spirit. The local children called her the Keeper of Stories because of her gift for weaving tales that captured their imagination, but few knew that behind her gentle smile lay a heart still aching for connection. The valley of Lumo itself seemed to understand her solitude. The wild sage that grew near her home would release its soothing fragrance whenever she passed, as if nature itself was trying to comfort her. The ancient baobab tree that stood guard over her small plot of land had been there long before her birth and would remain long after her passing, its massive trunk bearing silent witness to the unfolding of countless lives. Unlike many in the nearby village of Tumaini, Bibi Amara found solace in the wilderness. While others feared the unknown that lurked in the shadows of the valley, she saw beauty in its untamed spirit. Her small garden, a patchwork of hardy vegetables and medicinal herbs, was her pride and joy. The local healers would often seek her counsel, for she had a way with plants that seemed almost magical, coaxing life from the most reluctant soil. On this particular morning, something felt different in the air. The usual chorus of birds had fallen silent, and even the persistent breeze that typically rustled through the acacia leaves seemed to hold its breath. Bibi Amara paused in her morning routine, her experienced eyes scanning the horizon. Years of living alone had sharpened her senses, taught her to read the subtle signs of the valley like others read books. She had just begun her daily task of gathering kindling when she heard it. A sound so unexpected it made her weather-worn hands tremble. It wasn't the familiar cry of a bird or the call of any animal she knew. This sound was different, haunting, almost human in its desperation. It came again, weaker this time, but clear enough to pull at something deep within her heart. Without hesitation, Bibi Amara set down her gathering basket. Her feet, bare against the cool morning earth, moved with purpose despite her age. The sound led her away from the safety of her familiar surroundings, past the ancient baobab, and toward a dense thicket of thorny bushes that few dared to approach. The morning mist still clung to the ground, swirling around her ankles like ghostly hands as she carefully picked her way forward. As she pushed aside the branches, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation, the mist began to clear. There, in a small clearing that seemed to have appeared by magic, lay something that would change her life forever. The sight before her made her gasp, her hand flying to her mouth in astonishment. For a moment, time seemed to stand still, the very air heavy with the weight of destiny. What began as an ordinary morning was about to become the first chapter of an extraordinary story, a tale of unlikely friendship, unconditional love, and the remarkable events that would ultimately leave an entire village speechless. For there, trembling in the morning light, was a creature whose presence would challenge everything. The people of Tumaini thought they knew about the nature of family, loyalty, and the unbreakable bonds that can form between the most unexpected of souls. The scene before Bibi Amara was just the beginning of a journey that would not only heal her lonely heart, but would also leave an indelible mark on the valley of Lumo and its people. Little did she know that the vulnerable creature she was about to encounter would grow to become something beyond anyone's wildest dreams, and its actions after her passing would become the stuff of legends, whispered around firesides for generations to come. There, curled up in a nest of trampled grass, lay a sight that made Bibi Amara's breath catch in her throat. A baby baboon, no more than a few weeks old, shivered in the morning chill. But this was no ordinary infant. Its fur was as white as the morning mist, and its eyes, when they flickered open, shone with an almost ethereal golden hue. The creature's delicate pink skin showed through patches where its unusual white fur was sparse, making it look even more vulnerable. The tiny baboon's mother was nowhere to be seen, and scattered around the makeshift nest were signs of a recent predator attack. Broken branches, disturbed earth, and traces that told a story of a desperate escape. The baby had somehow survived what must have been a terrifying ordeal, but its chances of survival alone were slim. Albino animals rarely survived in the wild, their distinctive coloring making them easy targets for predators and outcasts among their own kind. As Bibi Amara knelt beside the trembling creature, her joints protesting the movement, she noticed something that stirred long-buried memories. The baby's left hand was curled around a small red flower, the same rare mountain bloom that her late husband Jabari had given her on their wedding day. These flowers bloomed only once a year, high on Mount Kilimani, and seeing one here, clutched in the tiny fingers of this extraordinary creature, felt like a sign she couldn't ignore. "Subira," she whispered, the name coming to her as naturally as breathing. Patience. It was what her husband had always counseled during difficult times, and now it seemed fitting for this small survivor who would need much patience to overcome the challenges ahead. The baby baboon's eyes fixed on her face, showing an intelligence that seemed beyond its years. When Bibi Amara slowly extended her hand, palm up in a gesture of peace, the tiny creature reached out with surprising gentleness to touch her weathered skin. The contact sent a warmth through her that she hadn't felt since losing her family. With careful movements, she unwrapped her kanga and created a soft sling to carry the infant. As she lifted Subira, she was struck by how light the baby felt, far too light for its age. "You must be hungry, little one." she murmured, cradling the trembling body close to her heart. The baby baboon snuggled against her chest, seeking warmth and comfort. The walk back to her home seemed different now, the familiar path transformed by the precious bundle she carried. The morning birds had resumed their songs, but to Bibi Amara they sounded like a celebration. Even the ancient baobab tree seemed to bend its branches protectively over them as they passed beneath its canopy. Inside her modest home, Bibi Amara's healer's instincts took over. She created a soft nest from spare blankets near the warmth of her cooking fire. With gentle hands, she examined the baby for injuries, finding only minor scratches that she treated. With a poultice made from the medicinal herbs in her garden, the tiny baboon remained surprisingly calm throughout, those intelligent eyes following her every movement. Drawing from her knowledge of raising orphaned animals, a skill she'd developed during her years of solitude, Bibi Amara prepared a mixture of mashed fruits and warm goat's milk. To her relief, Subira accepted the offering eagerly, tiny, hands grasping at the soft cloth she used to deliver the nourishment. As the day progressed, Bibi Amara found herself talking to Subira, sharing stories of her past life, her losses, and her hopes. The baby baboon listened with an almost human attention, occasionally reaching out to touch her face with those delicate fingers. "You and I," she said softly, "we're both different from the others, aren't we? But perhaps that's not such a bad thing." That first night when darkness fell over the valley of Lumo, Bibi Amara couldn't bring herself to leave Subira alone. She moved her sleeping mat next to the makeshift nest, and as she drifted off to sleep, she felt tiny fingers curl around her thumb. For the first time in years, the silence of her home didn't feel empty. It felt full of promise. The next few weeks brought challenges that tested both Bibi Amara's patience and resourcefulness. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Subira required constant care, from regular feedings throughout the night to careful protection from the harsh African sun that could easily burn his sensitive skin. She crafted small protective garments from soft cotton, creating a hood to shield his eyes and head when they needed to venture outside. But with each passing day, Subira grew stronger. His personality began to emerge, playful and curious, but also remarkably gentle. He showed an extraordinary ability to understand Bibi Amara's moods, offering comfort when she felt melancholy and sharing in her joy during moments of happiness. When she worked in her garden, Subira would watch intently, eventually learning to identify which plants were safe to touch and which needed to be avoided. Word of the unusual pair began to spread through the nearby village of Tumaini. Some of the braver children would peek over Bibi Amara's fence, hoping to catch a glimpse of the white baboon. Rather than hiding Subira away, she chose to introduce him gradually to those who showed genuine interest rather than fear or suspicion. Among the first to accept Subira was young Zuri, a girl of 12 who had lost her own mother and found solace in visiting Bibi Amara. She was fascinated by Subira's gentle nature and would spend hours helping to care for him. "He's like starlight in animal form," Zuri declared one day, watching Subira carefully arrange a collection of colored stones he had gathered. As the weeks turned into months, Subira's growth began to show signs of being extraordinary. Not just in size, though he was indeed growing faster and larger than any normal baboon, but in his capabilities. He learned to assist Bibi Amara with increasingly complex tasks, from carrying water containers to helping her sort herbs for her healing. Work. One memorable morning, Bibi Amara was struggling with a particularly stubborn root in her garden when she felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. Subira stood there, holding a digging stick in exactly the way he had seen her use it countless times. With careful movements, he began to help her loosen the soil around the root. The tenderness with which this increasingly powerful creature handled such delicate tasks brought tears to her eyes. The bond between them grew deeper with each passing day. Subira seemed to understand not just her words, but her unspoken needs. On days when the memories of her lost family weighed heavily on her heart, he would bring her small gifts, a pretty stone, a fallen flower, or sometimes just a comforting presence, and a head gently rested against her shoulder. Their routine developed its own rhythm. Each morning they would walk to the stream together, Subira carrying the water jug with growing confidence. He learned to identify medicinal plants with uncanny accuracy, often bringing Bibi Amara exactly what she needed before she even asked. In the evenings, they would sit beneath the baobab tree, sharing the peaceful moments as the sun painted the valley in gold. But it wasn't all quiet moments and gentle tasks. Subira's playful nature would shine through in unexpected ways. He developed a game of hiding small objects around the house and garden, creating elaborate trails for Bibi Amara to follow. His joy when she discovered each treasure was contagious, filling their home with laughter that had been absent for too long. As Subira's reputation for gentleness grew, more villagers began to visit. They brought their sick children for Bibi Amara's healing treatments and found themselves amazed by the white baboon, who would entertain the little ones with careful games while they waited. Some even began to see his unusual appearance as a blessing rather than an oddity. The local teacher, Master Jabari, no relation to Bibi Amara's late husband, was particularly intrigued by Subira's intelligence. He would spend hours observing the baboon's problem-solving abilities and communication with Bibi Amara. "There's something special here," he would say, watching Subira methodically organize herbs by type and color, "something we don't fully understand." But not everyone welcomed this unusual relationship. Some of the more traditional villagers whispered that it was unnatural for a wild creature to live so closely with humans. Others feared that as Subira grew larger, he would become dangerous. These concerns reached Bibi Amara's ears, but she remained steadfast in her trust of the gentle soul she had raised. One evening, as they sat beneath their baobab tree, Bibi Amara noticed Subira watching the sunset with an almost human expression of wonder. He turned to her and placed his hand over her heart, then over his own, a gesture he had created to express connection and love. In that moment, she understood that their bond transcended the boundaries between human and animal. It was something pure and profound, a meeting of souls that defied explanation. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Bibi Amara shared with Subira the story of how she had found him, of the red flower he had clutched in his tiny hand, and of her belief that he was a gift sent to heal her lonely heart. The white baboon listened intently, his golden eyes reflecting the starlight, while the valley of Lumo settled into its nightly peace around them. Unaware that this extraordinary relationship would soon face its greatest challenges and lead to events that would leave everyone speechless. As the seasons changed and years passed, Subira's growth became nothing short of extraordinary. By his third year with Bibi Amara, he had grown to an unprecedented size, his muscular frame towering over even the tallest men in Tumaini village. His snow-white fur gleamed in the sunlight, making him appear almost luminescent against the rich colors of the African landscape. Yet despite his imposing presence, his movements remained remarkably graceful, each gesture calculated and gentle. One particularly memorable morning, as Bibi Amara tended to her expanding medicinal garden, which had grown significantly with Subira's help, they received an unexpected visitor. A young mother from the neighboring village of Kusini stumbled into their yard, carrying a desperately ill child. The woman had walked through the night, having heard tales of the healing widow who lived with a mysterious white guardian. Without hesitation, Subira sprang into action. Before Bibi Amara could even rise from her garden, he had already arranged cushions in the shade of the baobab tree and fetched fresh water for the exhausted travelers. The young mother's initial fear of his size melted away as she watched him gently place a cooling cloth on her child's forehead, mimicking the actions he'd seen Bibi Amara perform countless times before. As Bibi Amara prepared her remedies, Subira kept the feverish child distracted with a game he had invented, using smooth river stones of different colors. His massive hands, capable of uprooting small trees, now moved with surgical precision as he arranged the stones in patterns for the sick child to copy. The mother watched in amazement as her child's fearful cries turned to gentle giggles. This incident marked a turning point in how the wider community viewed Subira. News of the gentle giant spread beyond Kilimani, bringing more people seeking help and healing. Some came for Bibi Amara's medical knowledge, while others were drawn by rumors of the incredible white baboon, who seemed to possess almost human understanding. Subira's abilities continued to develop in ways that astounded everyone. He learned to identify dozens of medicinal plants by scent alone, often discovering new healing herbs deep in the valley that even Bibi Amara hadn't known about. His strength, combined with his intelligence, made him an invaluable assistant in preparing remedies. He could crack tough seed pods with perfect precision, separating the useful parts from the chaff without bruising a single precious seed. The valley of Lumo itself seemed to respond to Subira's presence. Animals that typically avoided human settlements would appear when he was around, as if sensing a kindred spirit. Birds would perch on his massive shoulders, and even normally skittish antelope would graze peacefully nearby. This unusual harmony between wild and tame fascinated the local children, who began calling him the spirit of the valley. One day, Master Jabari, the village teacher, brought his entire class to observe Subira. The children watched in wonder as the massive baboon demonstrated his problem-solving abilities. Subira had developed a system of using different colored flowers to communicate specific needs or ideas to Bibi Amara: purple for pain, yellow for fever, white for digestive problems. The teacher documented this unique language they had developed, recognizing its significance. "What we're witnessing," Master Jabari announced to his wide-eyed students, "is not just intelligence, but wisdom. Subira teaches us that greatness lies not in size or strength, but in how we use our gifts to help others." However, Subira's growing influence also attracted unwanted attention. Rumors of the extraordinary white baboon reached the ears of wealthy collectors and dubious wildlife traders. Strange men began appearing in Kilimani, asking questions about the magical white beast. Their presence cast a shadow over the peaceful valley, bringing with it a sense of impending danger. Bibi Amara noticed how Subira became more protective during this time. He would position himself between her and any unfamiliar visitors, his golden eyes watchful but never aggressive. At night, he took to sleeping near the door of their home, one ear always alert for unusual sounds. The situation came to a head during the Harvest Festival, an annual celebration that brought people from all surrounding villages to Kilimani. The festival had always been a joyous occasion, with dancing, music, and sharing of food. This year, Subira participated by helping to carry heavy loads of grain and fruit to the festival grounds, his strength making light work of tasks that would have required several men. As the festivities were in full swing, a group of strangers attempted to separate Subira from the crowd, armed with ropes and tranquilizer darts. But they had severely underestimated both his intelligence and the loyalty of the villagers. Before the would-be captors could act, a group of children raised the alarm, having noticed their suspicious behavior. What happened next became legend in the valley of Lumo. Instead of responding with aggression, Subira demonstrated the true depth of his extraordinary nature. He calmly gathered all the children behind him, creating a living barrier between them and the threat. Then, standing to his full height, he let out a deep, resonating call that echoed through the valley. The sound was not threatening, but rather a summons. To everyone's amazement, from every direction came answers. Troops of wild baboons emerged from the surrounding wilderness, drawn by Subira's call. They took up positions around the festival grounds, not in an aggressive manner, but with a quiet show of solidarity. The message was clear: Subira was not alone, and the valley itself would protect its own. The would-be captors, faced with this extraordinary display of community between human, baboon, and wild nature, quietly withdrew. As they departed, the children broke into spontaneous cheers, and the festival transformed into a celebration of their unique guardian. That evening, as the celebration continued under the stars, something remarkable occurred. Subira, usually content to watch from the sidelines, joined in the traditional harvest dance. Moving with surprising grace for his size, he swayed to the drums, carefully mimicking the movements of the dancers. The sight of this massive white figure dancing under the moonlight, surrounded by laughing children and accepting adults, became a powerful symbol of the harmony possible between all living beings. The incident sparked a transformation in the valley. The villagers, who had long accepted Subira's presence, now actively embraced him as a vital part of their community. They began incorporating his extraordinary abilities into their daily lives in new ways. He helped the elderly carry water from the stream, assisted farmers with heavy tasks, and even developed a way to warn the village of approaching storms by reading subtle changes in animal behavior. Bibi Amara watched this evolution with pride and a touch of wonder. The frightened baby she had rescued had grown into not just a protector, but a bridge between worlds. His presence had transformed her life from one of solitude to one rich with purpose and connection. Together, they had created something unique, a model of compassion, understanding, and mutual support that transcended the boundaries between species. Yet even as Subira's position in the community strengthened, Bibi Amara noticed subtle changes in her own strength. Age was beginning to weigh more heavily on her bones, and some days the walk to the stream felt longer than before. But she found comfort in watching Subira interact with the villagers, knowing that her legacy would live on through the lessons of love and acceptance he embodied. What no one in the valley could have predicted was how these bonds would be tested in the days to come, or how Subira's true purpose would reveal itself in ways that would leave not just the village, but the entire region speechless with wonder. The greatest chapter of their story was yet to unfold, and it would begin with a challenge that would test the limits of both human and animal understanding. The change came gradually, like the shifting of seasons. Bibi Amara's once steady hands began to tremble when sorting herbs, and her daily walks grew shorter. Subira noticed these changes before anyone else, his golden eyes tracking her movements with increasing concern. He started taking on more tasks, anticipating her needs before she could voice them. One crisp morning, as the sun painted Mount Kilimani in shades of rose and gold, Bibi Amara stumbled while tending her beloved garden. Subira was at her side in an instant, his massive frame providing steady support. But as he helped her to her feet, both knew something had fundamentally changed. The woman who had once been the valley's pillar of strength was growing fragile. News of Bibi Amara's declining health spread through Tumani like ripples in a pond. The villagers who had come to depend on her wisdom and healing skills began making more frequent visits, each bringing small gifts, fresh bread, sweet fruits, or simply their time and company. Young Zuri, now a teenager and an apprentice healer herself, spent every free moment learning the secrets of the medicinal garden, knowing that someday she would need to carry on Bibi Amara's work. Subira's behavior during this time revealed depths of understanding that amazed even those who knew him best. He created a new daily routine, transforming their home to accommodate Bibi Amara's changing needs. Using his incredible strength and intelligence, he fashioned a comfortable seat near the garden, using soft grasses and fallen tree bark, positioning it so she could still oversee her beloved plants while resting. More remarkably, he began teaching Zuri in his own way. The massive white baboon would carefully demonstrate the precise way to crush herbs, showing the young apprentice which plants worked together and which needed to be kept separate. He had absorbed years of Bibi Amara's knowledge and was now ensuring it wouldn't be lost. One evening, as the setting sun cast long shadows across the valley, Master Jabari visited with a group of elders. They found Bibi Amara seated in her special chair, watching Subira arrange medicinal herbs with Zuri. The sight of the enormous white baboon gently guiding the young girl's hands, showing her exactly how much pressure to apply when grinding delicate leaves, brought tears to their eyes. "In all my years of teaching," Master Jabari said softly, "I've never seen anything quite like this. He's not just copying what he's learned, he's passing it on, ensuring the knowledge survives." The elders nodded in agreement, finally understanding that Subira was more than just an extraordinary animal. He was a guardian of wisdom, a bridge between the old ways and the new. His presence in their community had grown from a curiosity to an essential thread in the fabric of their lives. As autumn approached, bringing cooler winds from the mountains, Bibi Amara's condition worsened. Her breathing became labored, and her once strong voice grew soft. But even in her weakened state, she continued to share her knowledge, now with Subira acting as both assistant and interpreter. He would bring specific herbs to her bedside, and through subtle gestures and expressions, help convey her instructions to Zuri and other learning healers. One particularly challenging day, a young mother rushed to their home with a desperately ill infant. Bibi Amara was too weak to move from her bed, but Subira sprang into action. With incredible precision, he gathered the exact herbs needed for the baby's fever, preparing them just as he had seen done countless times before. Under his guidance, and with Zuri's help, they created the medicine that saved the child's life. The incident spread through the surrounding villages, adding to The growing legend of the white baboon. People began to speak of him not as an animal, but as a blessed being, a guardian spirit in physical form. Some even claimed that on moonlit nights they could see a silvery glow emanating from his white fur, as though the stars themselves had blessed him. During this time, Subira rarely left Bibi Amara's side. He would sit for hours, his massive frame somehow fitting perfectly in the small space beside her bed, one gentle hand always in contact with her arm or shoulder. His presence seemed to bring her comfort, and often her pain would ease just from his touch. The local children, who had grown up knowing Subira as their protector and friend, began bringing small offerings, flowers, colorful stones, and bits of fruit. They would place these gifts outside the door of Bibi Amara's home, creating a growing testament to the love both she and Subira had brought to their community. One clear night, when the moon hung full and bright over the valley of Lumo, Bibi Amara called Zuri and the village elders to her bedside. Subira sat nearby, his golden eyes reflecting the lamplight as she spoke her final wishes. Her voice, though weak, carried the weight of prophecy. "Subira," she said, reaching out to touch his white fur, "was never mine to keep. He came to us for a greater purpose, to teach us that wisdom knows no bounds, that love transcends all barriers. When I'm gone, he will need all of you, just as you will need him." The elders listened solemnly, understanding the gravity of her words. They had witnessed the extraordinary bond between woman and baboon, seen how it had transformed their community. Now they were being entrusted with its legacy. That night, something extraordinary happened. As Bibi Amara's breathing grew more labored, Subira began to hum, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to come from the earth itself. The vibration filled the small home, and soon, from the darkness outside, other voices joined in. The wild baboons of the valley, drawn by some mysterious connection to their white-furred kin, added their calls to his song. The sound was unlike anything anyone had ever heard, not mournful, but somehow transcendent, as though nature itself was preparing to witness something momentous. The village children, awakened by the strange music, claimed they saw stars, falling like tears from the sky. As midnight approached, Bibi Amara opened her eyes one last time. They found Subira's golden gaze, and a smile of perfect peace crossed her face. She raised her hand to touch his cheek, and in that moment, those present swore they saw a shimmer of light pass between them, like a promise being sealed. With her final breath, Bibi Amara whispered words that would be remembered and repeated for generations. Love knows no form, wisdom knows no bounds, and true guardians never die. They transform. In the profound silence that followed, Subira's massive frame remained perfectly still, his hand resting gently where Bibi Amara's heart had beat its last. The moonlight streaming through the window seemed to gather around him, making his white fur glow with an otherworldly radiance. But this was not the end of their story. It was merely the threshold of something even more extraordinary. For, in the days that followed, Subira would reveal the true depth of his purpose, and his actions would indeed leave everyone speechless. The valley of Lumo was about to witness the fulfillment of a promise that had begun on that misty morning years ago, when a lonely widow had found a trembling white baby baboon in the grass. In the days following Bibi Amara's passing, the valley of Lumo witnessed a transformation that would become the stuff of legends. The massive white baboon's grief manifested not in withdrawal or aggression, but in an extraordinary expansion of his role within the community. Subira seemed to channel his loss into an even deeper commitment to continuing Bibi Amara's legacy of healing and wisdom. The morning after her burial, beneath the ancient baobab tree, villagers awoke to find neat bundles of medicinal herbs on their doorsteps, each carefully arranged according to their specific ailments. Subira had worked through the night, remembering every person's health concerns, preparing remedies just as Bibi Amara had taught him. His dedication touched even the most skeptical hearts. One particularly moving incident occurred when old Jabali, the village carpenter who had long been wary of Subira, fell ill with a dangerous fever. Before anyone could seek help, Subira appeared at his door with the exact combination of fever-reducing herbs that Bibi Amara had once used to save Jabali's grandchild. The old carpenter's prejudices melted away as he watched the gentle giant prepare the medicine with almost ritualistic precision. Subira's intelligence seemed to have evolved into something beyond what anyone could have imagined. He began developing new methods of preparing traditional remedies, combining different herbs in ways that proved even more effective than the original recipes. Young Zuri, working alongside him, documented these innovations, creating a bridge between ancient wisdom and new discoveries. The white baboon's influence extended far beyond medicine. He seemed to have inherited Bibi Amara's gift for understanding not just physical ailments, but emotional ones as well. When young children were troubled, they would often seek him out, drawn to his patient, accepting presence. He would sit with them for hours, his golden eyes full of understanding, occasionally offering a carefully chosen stone or flower that somehow always seemed to match their emotional needs. One remarkable example was his interaction with Malaika, a young girl who had stopped speaking after losing her parents to illness. Where all human efforts had failed, Subira found a way to reach her. He began bringing her colorful feathers each morning, arranging them in patterns that told stories. Gradually, Malaika started using the feathers to communicate back, and eventually her voice returned. The villagers watched in amazement as the traumatized child found healing through the patience and creativity of this extraordinary creature. Subira's physical capabilities continued to astonish. His strength, combined with his gentle nature, made him invaluable during emergencies. When flash floods threatened the lower village during the rainy season, he worked tirelessly to help build barriers, carrying loads that would have required several men. His presence seemed to calm panic, his methodical approach inspiring others to work together efficiently. But perhaps most remarkable was his role in bringing together the human and natural worlds. Under his influence, the village began to change its relationship with the surrounding wilderness. He showed them how to gather herbs sustainably, how to read weather patterns in animal behavior, and how to coexist with the wild baboon troops that now regularly visited the village boundaries. Master Jabari, who had long studied Subira's behavior, noticed something extraordinary about these wild baboon visits. The troops seemed to be organized, with different groups arriving on different days, each bringing specific types of plants or fruits that had medicinal properties. It was as if Subira had established a network of collectors, expanding the range of healing resources available to the village. The transformation of the Valley of Lumo continued in unexpected ways. Farmers began reporting increased crop yields after adopting planting patterns they had observed Subira creating in Bibi Amara's old garden. His method of interweaving different plants seemed to protect against pests while enriching the soil naturally. Word of the extraordinary white baboon spread far beyond the valley, drawing visitors from distant lands. Among them was a renowned ethnobotanist who spent weeks documenting the unique medicinal preparations Subira had developed. She declared that several of his herb combinations represented breakthroughs in traditional medicine, offering more effective treatments for chronic conditions. But it was Subira's work with the village children that truly showcased the depth of his impact. He began organizing them into what the villagers called wisdom circles, groups dedicated to learning about healing plants, weather patterns, and the delicate balance of nature. Using an intricate system of gestures, objects, and demonstrations, he passed on not just knowledge, but a way of seeing the world that combined respect for tradition with openness to innovation. The children proved to be eager students, their young minds readily grasping the subtle ways Subira communicated. They learned to identify healing plants by smell and texture, to read weather changes in cloud patterns, and to understand the complex relationships between different species in their ecosystem. More importantly, they learned to approach the natural world with reverence and curiosity, rather than fear. One day, during a wisdom circle session, something unprecedented occurred. A group of young elephants, led by an old matriarch, approached the village. Instead of causing panic, Subira calmly walked out to meet them, the children following at a safe distance. What they witnessed became another chapter in the valley's growing legend. Subira and the elephant matriarch seemed to communicate through subtle gestures and movements, establishing what would become a lasting relationship between the village and the elephant herd. This connection proved invaluable during the next dry season, when the elephants led villagers to hidden water sources they had never known existed. It was as if Subira had brokered a treaty between species, each sharing their unique knowledge for the benefit of all. As the seasons turned, Subira's influence continued to grow in unexpected ways. He began showing interest in the village's traditional ceremonies, adding elements that seemed to deepen their spiritual significance. During the harvest festival, he introduced a ritual of planting new medicinal herbs, ensuring that the cycle of healing would continue. His presence during these ceremonies seemed to bridge the gap between the physical and spiritual worlds, lending a profound sense of connection to something greater than themselves. Yet through all these changes, Subira never forgot Bibi Amara. Each morning before beginning his daily rounds, he would spend time at her grave beneath the baobab tree. Often villagers would find fresh flowers arranged there in patterns that seemed to hold special meaning. The children claimed that on these mornings, Subira's white fur glowed with an inner light, as if blessed by some divine connection. As the first year without Bibi Amara drew to a close, the valley of Lumo had been transformed. What had once been a traditional farming community had become a center of healing and learning, where the boundaries between human and natural wisdom had dissolved. Subira had not just preserved Bibi Amara's legacy, he had expanded it in ways that would influence generations to come. But even these remarkable changes were just the beginning. The true extent of Subira's impact on the valley and its people was about to reveal itself in ways that would indeed leave everyone speechless, for in his actions they would witness not just the fulfillment of Bibi Amara's final prophecy, but the emergence of something entirely new, a vision of harmony between all living things that would challenge their understanding of what was possible. As the second year after Bibi Amara's passing began, the valley of Lumo faced its greatest challenge yet. A severe drought gripped the region, turning the once lush landscape into a parched wasteland. Crops withered in the fields, streams ran dry, and the wildlife began to suffer. It was during this crisis that Subira's true purpose became crystal clear. One scorching morning, the massive white baboon stood atop the highest point near the village, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. The children who had been part of his wisdom circles noticed his unusual behavior first. They watched as he methodically studied the movement of clouds, the direction of the wind, and the behavior of the few remaining birds. Then something extraordinary happened. Subira began marking the ground with his staff, a tool he had fashioned himself from a fallen branch. The marks formed an intricate map, showing not just the village and its surroundings, but paths that no one had known existed. Young Zuri, now a respected healer in her own right, recognized some of the symbols as similar to those Bibi Amara had used in her healing work. Within days, Subira began leading small groups into the mountains, following routes that seemed random at first, but soon revealed their purpose. Hidden springs, unknown to even the oldest villagers, were discovered beneath ancient rock formations. Underground water sources, marked by specific arrangements of plants that only Subira seemed able to identify, provided relief to the parched community. But water was just the beginning. The white baboon's knowledge of survival during drought proved to be comprehensive and almost supernatural. He showed the villagers how to find edible tubers deep underground, taught them to harvest morning dew using specially arranged stones, and demonstrated methods of preserving what little water they had using natural filtration systems. The elephant herd he had befriended joined in these efforts, using their ancient knowledge of the land to uncover additional water sources. The sight of the massive white baboon working alongside these gentle giants, coordinating their efforts to help the human community, became a powerful symbol of hope during the crisis. More remarkably, Subira began organizing the wild baboon troops into an elaborate network of scouts and gatherers. Each morning, different groups would depart in various directions, returning with information about water sources, edible plants, and approaching weather patterns. The level of coordination was unprecedented. It was as if he had created an early warning system that combined the knowledge of every species in the valley. One particularly memorable incident occurred when a group of children, led by Subira, discovered a series of ancient cave paintings high in the mountains. The images seemed to tell the story of previous droughts and how the people of the valley had survived them. Subira's reaction to these paintings was extraordinary. He spent hours studying them, then began incorporating their wisdom into his teaching. The crisis brought out new aspects of Subira's intelligence that left even his closest observers amazed. He developed a system of using different colored stones to track the movement of underground water, creating maps that helped the villagers plan their water conservation efforts. His ability to synthesize ancient knowledge with practical solutions seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. Master Jabari, who had documented Subira's activities since Bibi Amara's time, noticed something remarkable about his behavior during the drought. "He's not just helping us survive," the teacher observed. "He's teaching us to be self-sufficient. Every solution he shows us becomes a lesson for the future." Indeed, Subira's methods were transforming the community's entire approach to living in harmony with their environment. The village began adapting its architecture based on his guidance, creating structures that collected dew and remained cool in the intense heat. Gardens were redesigned to require minimal water while producing maximum yield, using principles that seemed to combine ancient wisdom with innovative techniques. The wild animals of the valley, perhaps sensing Subira's unique role, began to gather near the village in unprecedented numbers. Rather than competing for the scarce resources, they seemed to participate in a coordinated effort to survive. Predator and prey alike maintained an unusual peace, as if understanding the need to conserve energy and share the limited resources. But perhaps the most profound impact was on the children. Those who had been part of Subira's wisdom circles began showing remarkable abilities to read natural signs and understand ecological relationships. They became the bridge between his silent knowledge and the practical needs of the community, translating his gestures and signs into actionable information. One young boy, inspired by Subira's methods, developed a new way of collecting water from the morning mist using locally available materials. Another discovered how to predict incoming rain by observing subtle changes in plant behavior. These innovations, born from the combination of Subira's teaching and youthful creativity, proved crucial to the village's survival. As the drought persisted, something remarkable began to happen in the valley of Lumo. Instead of fragmenting, under the pressure of scarcity, the community grew stronger and more united. Subira's influence had created a new kind of society, one where human and animal wisdom combined to create resilience in the face of adversity. The valley's transformation caught the attention of neighboring communities who sent representatives to learn from this extraordinary example. They found a place where ancient wisdom and innovation worked hand in hand, where the boundary between human and natural world had dissolved into a harmonious whole. Visitors were amazed to see children working alongside wild animals to maintain water sources, using methods that seemed to defy conventional understanding. They witnessed elderly villagers sharing ancient stories, while Subira added his own silent wisdom through gestures and demonstrations that somehow made the old tales more relevant than ever. But it was during a moonlit night, when the drought was at its most severe, that Subira revealed something truly extraordinary. Gathering the entire village beneath the stars, he began a series of movements that seemed to combine dance with ritual. As he moved, the wild baboons joined in, creating rhythms with their calls that echoed through the valley. The elephants appeared next, their low rumbles adding depth to the growing symphony. Soon, every animal in the valley seemed to be participating in what the villagers would later describe as the Song of Unity. The vibrations seemed to reach deep into the earth itself, connecting all living things in a web of sound and movement. What happened next would be debated for generations. Some say the clouds gathered in response to the ceremony, while others believe it was simply coincidence. But as the night reached its peak, the first drops of rain in months began to fall. The drought's end had begun, not with a destructive deluge, but with a gentle, nurturing rain that seemed to know exactly what the parched earth needed. As the life-giving water soaked into the ground, Subira stood motionless, his white fur gleaming in the moonlight. The rain seemed to create a luminous aura around him, and for a moment, many swore they saw Bibi Amara's spirit standing beside him, her smile as gentle as ever. The valley of Lumo had witnessed more than just survival. It had experienced a profound lesson in the power of unity between all living things. Subira had shown them that true wisdom comes not from dominance over nature, but from learning to live as part of it. But even this remarkable achievement was not the final chapter in Subira's story. The greatest revelation, the one that would truly leave everyone speechless, was yet to come. For in the wake of the drought, as the valley began to bloom again, Subira would demonstrate a truth so profound that it would change their understanding of consciousness itself. As the rains transformed the valley of Lumo back into a lush paradise, Subira's behavior began to change in subtle but significant ways. The massive white baboon spent more time in solitary meditation beneath the baobab tree, where Bibi Amara rested, his golden eyes fixed on distant horizons, as if seeing beyond the physical world. The children of his wisdom circles were the first to notice something extraordinary happening. Plants seemed to grow more vigorously wherever Subira spent time in contemplation. The earth itself appeared to respond to his presence, sprouting new varieties of healing herbs that had never been seen in the valley before. One remarkable morning, young Amani, the most perceptive of Subira's students, discovered something astonishing. Following Subira's tracks from his dawn meditation, she found a series of intricate patterns pressed into the earth. The designs weren't random. They were perfect mathematical representations of growth patterns found in nature. Spirals that matched those of seashells, arrangements that reflected the symmetry of flower petals. Master Jabari, called to examine the patterns, was astounded. "These are the fundamental mathematical principles of life itself," he declared, his voice trembling with awe. "Subira isn't just communicating, he's revealing the underlying structure of creation." The revelations continued as Subira began leading selected groups to hidden caves in the mountains. Inside, he would create elaborate displays using stones, leaves and shadows to demonstrate complex natural phenomena. He showed them how the movement of planets affected plant growth, how the migration patterns of birds followed invisible magnetic lines, and how the rhythm of insect songs predicted weather changes. But the most profound demonstration came during the Harvest Moon Festival. As the village gathered for their traditional celebrations, Subira emerged from the baobab grove, carrying something that made everyone gasp, a perfect replica of Bibi Amara's healing staff, crafted from intertwined vines and crystal formations he had gathered from the mountains. Standing in the center of the gathering, Subira began a series of movements that seemed to transcend the physical realm. His white fur caught the moonlight, creating patterns of light that danced across the ground. As he moved, the staff in his hands began to emit a soft, pulsing glow. The village fell silent as they witnessed something beyond their understanding. The light from the staff seemed to connect with every living thing around them. Plants swayed without wind. Animals emerged from the darkness to watch, and even the stars seemed to pulse in rhythm with Subira's movements. Then, in a moment that would be remembered for generations, Subira did something unprecedented. He began to write in the earth, using the staff to create symbols that combined elements of human language with natural patterns. The messages he formed spoke of unity between all living things, of wisdom that transcended species, and of a future where the barriers between human understanding and natural knowledge would dissolve completely. What followed was even more extraordinary. Subira began teaching the children to communicate directly with plants, showing them how to sense the subtle energies that flowed through all living things. Under his guidance, they learned to feel the pulse of growing seeds, to understand the whispered messages of trees, and to read the stories written in patterns of bark and leaf. One particularly gifted student, a young girl named Safia, developed the ability to diagnose illnesses simply by observing the way plants responded to a person's presence. "The plants know," she explained, They've always known. Subira is teaching us their language. The implications of these developments were profound. The Valley of Lumo was becoming a place where the boundaries between different forms of consciousness began to blur. People reported experiencing shared dreams, finding themselves able to sense approaching weather changes in their bones, and developing deeper connections with the natural world than ever before. Subira's teachings expanded to include what he called the wisdom of stones. He showed how certain crystals could amplify healing energies, how rock formations could store and transmit information, and how the very ground beneath their feet was alive with ancient memories. But perhaps most remarkably, he began to reveal the true nature of his own consciousness. Through elaborate demonstrations involving light, shadow, and reflection, he showed that his physical form, the white baboon they had known for years, was merely a vessel for something far more profound. During one memorable demonstration, he created a display using dewdrops and morning light that seemed to show multiple dimensions of reality existing simultaneously. The children who witnessed this described seeing glimpses of other worlds, of possibilities that existed alongside their own reality. The Valley of Lumo was transforming into something unprecedented, a place where the wisdom of multiple species could be shared and understood by all. The baboon troops that had long been part of Subira's network began teaching their own young ones alongside human children. Elephants shared their ancient knowledge of the Earth's rhythms. Even the smallest insects became recognized as carriers of essential wisdom. As these changes unfolded, the villagers began to understand that Subira's presence in their community had never been an accident. The frightened albino baby that Bibi Amara had rescued years ago had been part of a greater plan, a bridge between worlds that would help humanity remember its deep connection to all life. The final revelation came during a gathering of all the valley's inhabitants, human and animal alike. Using his staff and the natural elements around him, Subira created a living map of consciousness, a demonstration of how all living things were connected through threads of awareness that transcended physical form. In that moment, as the gathered community watched in awe, they understood that Subira wasn't just a remarkably intelligent animal, nor was he simply a spiritual being in animal form. He was a messenger, a teacher who had chosen to take this form to help bridge the gap between human understanding and the vast wisdom of the natural world. But even as these profound truths were being revealed, signs began to appear that suggested Subira's physical mission might be approaching its completion. The patterns he created became more complex, more urgent, as if he was trying to share as much knowledge as possible in the time remaining. Yet there was no sadness in his actions, no sense of impending loss. Instead, there was a feeling of fulfillment, of pieces falling into place according to a grand design that was only now becoming clear to those who had been part of his journey. The Valley of Lumo held its breath, sensing that they were about to witness the final and most extraordinary chapter of Subira's story, a revelation that would indeed leave them speechless, but would also ensure that his wisdom would continue to guide and transform lives for generations to come. The transformation began on a night when the moon hung full and bright over the Valley of Lumo. Subira stood atop the highest point near the village, his white fur luminescent against the dark sky. In his hands he held the crystal-adorned staff that had become a symbol of his wisdom and connection to the natural world. Around him gathered not just the villagers, but representatives from every species that called the valley home. Wild baboon troops perched in nearby trees, their eyes reflecting the moonlight. The elephant herd stood in silent witness, their ancient wisdom adding gravity to the moment. Even the smallest creatures, birds, insects, and reptiles, seemed to sense the significance of what was about to unfold. Safia, now recognized as Subira's most gifted student, took her place beside him. Over the past months, she had been receiving increasingly complex teachings, as if being prepared for this very moment. Her young face showed both anticipation and understanding beyond her years. With deliberate movements, Subira began what appeared to be a ceremony. Using his staff, he traced patterns in the earth that spiraled outward from where he stood. As he moved, the crystals in the staff began to pulse with an inner light that matched the rhythm of his movements. The ground beneath their feet started to vibrate with a deep, resonant hum. Then something extraordinary happened. The patterns Subira had drawn began to emit their own light, creating a network of luminous lines that connected everyone present. Those who stood within this network reported feeling a profound sense of unity, not just with each other, but with every living thing around them. Through this connection, Subira began to share visions. The villagers found themselves experiencing memories that weren't their own. The ancient migrations of elephants, the secret life cycles of plants, the complex social bonds of baboon communities. It was as if he was downloading generations of wisdom directly into their consciousness. But these weren't just memories. Subira was showing them a new way of seeing reality itself. Through his eyes, they witnessed how all living things were, connected by threads of light and energy, how every action rippled through an invisible web of consciousness that encompassed all life. Master Jabari, who had documented Subira's teachings for years, suddenly understood what he was witnessing. "He's not just teaching us," the old teacher declared, his voice filled with wonder. "He's evolving our consciousness, helping us reach the next stage of human awareness." As the night deepened, Subira's demonstrations became more profound. He showed how thoughts could influence the growth of plants, how emotions affected the quality of water, and how intention could shape the very fabric of reality. The children of his wisdom circles, their minds more open to these possibilities, began to demonstrate these abilities themselves. The most dramatic moment came when Subira revealed what appeared to be a window into other dimensions. Using nothing but moonlight and the crystals in his staff, he created what looked like a shimmering portal through which glimpses of other realities could be seen. Some reported seeing versions of the valley in different times, while others described landscapes that seemed to exist beyond ordinary space and time. Through these demonstrations, Subira conveyed a critical message. The form he had taken, the white baboon they had known and loved, had been chosen specifically for this time and place, but it was merely one expression of a much larger consciousness. He showed them that similar teachers existed throughout the natural world, taking whatever form was needed to help guide humanity's evolution. As dawn approached, Subira's physical form began to change. The white fur that had made him so distinctive started to emit an increasingly bright light. Those present described it as watching starlight coalesce into physical form. The transformation was both beautiful and profound, yet somehow not frightening. Instead, it filled everyone with a sense of peace and understanding. Young Amani, who had been one of the first to recognize the changes in Subira, stepped forward. "He's not leaving us," she announced with quiet certainty. "He's showing us what we can become." Indeed, as Subira's physical form continued its transformation, something remarkable happened. The wisdom he had shared began to manifest in tangible ways throughout the community. Children demonstrated unprecedented abilities to communicate with animals and plants. Healers found themselves able to sense illness and imbalance through the same energy fields Subira had revealed. The valley of Lumo itself seemed to respond to this elevation of consciousness. New species of healing plants emerged, growing in patterns that reflected the sacred geometry Subira had taught. The weather patterns became more harmonious, as if responding to the community's enhanced understanding of natural rhythms. But the most remarkable changes were in the people themselves. The barriers that had once existed between human consciousness and the natural world began to dissolve. People found themselves able to sense the emotions of trees, to understand the messages carried by the wind, and to read the stories written in the land itself. Sophia, in particular, emerged as a living example of what humanity could become. Under Subira's guidance, she had developed abilities that seemed almost magical, healing with pure intention, communicating across species barriers, and reading the ancient memories stored in stones and crystals. As the first rays of sun touched the valley, Subira's transformation reached its peak. His physical form had become pure light, yet his presence remained more tangible than ever. Through this metamorphosis, he showed them that consciousness was not bound by physical form. It was eternal, ever-evolving, and connected to all things. The staff he had carried, now floating in mid-air, separated into multiple crystal shards that dispersed throughout the valley. Each fragment contained a portion of his teachings, ensuring that his wisdom would remain accessible to future generations. These crystals would become known as the seeds of light, each one a key to unlocking different aspects of the enhanced consciousness he had helped awaken. The Valley of Lumo had become more than just a place. It was now a living example of humanity's potential future, where the artificial boundaries between species, between consciousness and matter, between wisdom and daily life, had dissolved into a harmonious whole. As Subira's light merged with the dawn, his final message resonated through every heart. They had not witnessed an ending, but rather the beginning of a new chapter in the evolution of consciousness. The frightened albino baboon that Bibi Amara had rescued years ago had fulfilled its purpose, transforming not just a single valley, but offering a glimpse of what was possible for all of humanity. The Valley of Lumo would forever stand as a testament to this truth, that within every being lies the potential for transformation, and that love, wisdom, and consciousness know no bounds. The story of the white baboon who became light would be told for generations, inspiring others to look beyond physical form, to recognize the divine consciousness that connects all living things. And so, as the sun rose fully over the valley, those who had witnessed Subira's transformation found themselves not speechless with shock, but filled with a profound understanding that would continue to deepen and evolve, just as he had taught them. His physical form may have transformed, but his presence remained, woven into the very fabric of their reality, a living reminder that the greatest miracles often begin with a simple act of compassion. In the years that followed Subira's transformation, the Valley of Lumo blossomed into something extraordinary. The seeds of light, those crystal fragments of his staff, had taken root throughout the region, each one becoming a focal point for different aspects of the enhanced consciousness he had awakened in the community. The most remarkable changes were evident in the children who had been part of Subira's wisdom circles. They grew into what the villagers called the Light Keepers, individuals who could access and channel the different abilities Subira had revealed. Young Safia, now a young woman, emerged as their natural leader, her connection to the new consciousness stronger than ever. Under her guidance, the Valley of Lumo became a living laboratory of human potential. The healing abilities she had learned from Subira expanded into new territories. She discovered that each seed of light resonated with different aspects of consciousness. One enhanced the ability to communicate with plants, another strengthened the connection with animals, while others opened doorways to understanding, weather patterns and earth energies. The village itself underwent a profound transformation. The traditional mud brick houses were rebuilt using principles of sacred geometry that Subira had taught them, creating structures that naturally amplified healing energies and fostered harmony with the environment. Gardens were redesigned to follow the mathematical patterns he had revealed, resulting in unprecedented abundance and vitality in their crops. The interaction between humans and animals reached new levels of sophistication. The elephant herd, that had been part of Subira's network, now participated actively in teaching the younger generation. They would arrive at specific times to demonstrate their ancient knowledge of weather patterns, underground water sources, and the subtle energies that flowed through the earth. The wild baboon troops that had once been mere observers became active partners in the community's evolution. They developed a complex system of cooperation with the villagers, sharing their knowledge of plants and helping to maintain the delicate balance of the ecosystem. Their own young ones would often play with human children, creating bonds that transcended species barriers. Perhaps the most profound change was in how the community handled challenges. When a severe storm threatened the valley, the Light Keepers gathered at the seed points, using their enhanced consciousness to work with rather than against the natural forces. The result was a controlled release of energy that brought needed rain without destruction. The valley's reputation spread, attracting seekers from distant lands who came to learn about this new way of living. But what they found was not a cult or a religion. It was a practical demonstration of human potential, grounded in the wisdom Subira had shared. The visitors discovered that these abilities weren't magical or supernatural. They were natural extensions of human consciousness that had simply been forgotten over time. Master Jabari, now elderly but still sharp, continued his documentation of these developments. What Subira gave us, he would often say, wasn't just knowledge. It was a key to unlocking abilities that have always been within us. Each generation takes these teachings further, discovering new aspects of what's possible. The Light Keepers established a school where these abilities could be developed systematically. Students learned to read the energy fields of plants and animals, to understand the language of weather, and to work with the conscious intelligence that pervaded all of nature. But more importantly, they learned to integrate these abilities into daily life, creating a society where enhanced consciousness was not separate from ordinary existence. One particularly moving example of this integration occurred during a drought that affected neighboring regions. The Valley of Lumo, thanks to their enhanced understanding of natural systems, not only maintained their own water supply, but helped surrounding communities develop sustainable solutions. The Light Keepers taught others how to sense underground water sources, how to work with plant consciousness to conserve moisture, and how to harmonize human needs with natural cycles. The seeds of light played a crucial role in this expansion of consciousness. Each crystal fragment seemed to have its own specialty. One enhanced intuition, another strengthened the ability to heal, while others facilitated communication across species barriers. But they weren't magical talismans. Rather, they served as tools to help people access abilities that were already within them. The children born in the valley after Subira's transformation showed natural abilities that amazed even the light. Keepers. They could see energy fields without training, communicate telepathically with animals from birth, and understand the complex patterns of nature intuitively. It was as if Subira's presence had activated something in the valley's genetic memory, allowing each generation to start from a higher level of consciousness. The annual harvest festival became a celebration not just of physical abundance, but of spiritual evolution. During these gatherings, the Light Keepers would demonstrate the progress of their abilities, showing how human consciousness could work in harmony with natural forces to create sustainable abundance for all. Sophia's own development continued to astonish everyone. She discovered that the seeds of light could be used in combination to access even deeper levels of consciousness. By arranging them in specific patterns, she could create energy fields that facilitated healing on a massive scale, enhanced plant growth, or even influenced weather patterns for the benefit of all. But perhaps the most beautiful aspect of the valley's transformation was how it affected daily life. The enhanced consciousness didn't separate people from ordinary existence. Instead, it made every aspect of life richer and more meaningful. Simple tasks like planting seeds, preparing food, or building homes became opportunities to work in conscious partnership with nature. The Valley of Lumo had become living proof of what Subira had tried to teach them, that consciousness knows no bounds, that wisdom flows through all living things, and that human potential is far greater than anyone had imagined. His physical transformation had been just the beginning of a much larger evolution, one that continued to unfold in unexpected and beautiful ways. As the years passed, the story of the white baboon who became light was told and retold, but it was no longer just a tale of wonder. It was a practical guide to human evolution, a reminder that the most extraordinary transformations often begin with simple acts of compassion and understanding. And so, the Valley of Lumo continued to grow and evolve, its light spreading quietly but steadily into the world beyond. Those who had witnessed Subira's final transformation understood that they hadn't lost him at all. He had simply shown them what they could become, initiating a process of evolution that would continue for generations to come. The greatest miracle, they discovered, wasn't in the extraordinary abilities they had developed, but in the simple truth that Subira had tried to teach them from the beginning, that love, wisdom, and consciousness are infinite in their potential, limited only by our willingness to grow and transform. A decade after Subira's transformation, the Valley of Lumo faced its greatest test. Climate changes were affecting regions across Africa, bringing unprecedented challenges. But unlike other communities that struggled with these changes, the valley had evolved into a beacon of hope and resilience, thanks to the living legacy of the white baboon who had become light. The seeds of light, those crystal fragments scattered throughout the valley, had matured into powerful nodes of transformation. Each one had developed its own unique signature, creating a network of energy that supported the valley's enhanced consciousness. Under Sophia's guidance, the Light Keepers had learned to work with these energies in ways that even Subira might not have imagined. One remarkable discovery came when a group of young Light Keepers, led by Zuri's daughter Amara, named in honor of Bibi Amara, found that the seeds could be used to create sustainable energy fields. These fields not only supported plant growth and water conservation, but also generated a form of clean energy that powered the entire valley without harming the environment. The valley's transformation had reached new heights. The traditional mud brick homes had evolved into living structures that responded to their inhabitants' needs. Gardens produced food year-round, regardless of external weather conditions. The boundary between human consciousness and natural intelligence had become so fluid that even visitors could sense the difference as soon as they entered the valley. Perhaps most remarkable was how the animal communities had evolved alongside their human partners. The elephant herd that had been part of Subira's original network now participated in regular councils with the Light Keepers. Their ancient wisdom, combined with enhanced human consciousness, created solutions to environmental challenges that neither species could have developed alone. The Baboon troops had developed their own form of enhanced consciousness. Their young ones were born with white patches in their fur, not albino like Subira had been, but marked with patterns that seemed to reflect the sacred geometry he had taught. These new generations showed extraordinary abilities to work with, the seeds of light, creating a true partnership between species. One day, as storm clouds gathered on the horizon, young Amara made a discovery that would change everything. While meditating near the original seed of light, the largest crystal fragment from Subira's staff, she received a vision. In it, Subira showed her that the seeds were not just tools for enhancement. They were seeds in the truest sense, meant to grow and multiply. Working with a group of light keepers, Amara began experimenting with this new understanding. They discovered that when the seeds were planted in specific patterns and nurtured with conscious intention, they would generate new crystals with similar properties. This meant that the valley's transformation could be replicated in other places. The implications were enormous. As climate challenges intensified around the world, the Valley of Lumo had discovered a way to share their enhanced consciousness and sustainable practices with others. But Safia, now a wise elder herself, understood that this gift came with great responsibility. "We must remember what Subira taught us," she reminded the Light Keepers. "True transformation comes not from the crystals themselves, but from the awakening of wisdom that lies dormant within all living things." The valley developed a careful process for sharing their knowledge. Representatives from other communities were invited to spend time in Lumo, learning not just the practical applications of enhanced consciousness, but the deeper wisdom that made it possible. The Light Keepers taught them how to work with the new seeds, how to develop their own abilities, and how to maintain harmony with the natural world. The results were beyond anything they could have imagined. As new seeds took root in other places, each community developed its own unique expression of enhanced consciousness. Some became centers of healing, others developed new forms of sustainable technology, and still others discovered ways to communicate with aspects of nature that had never been understood before. But the most beautiful transformations were often the smallest and most personal. In one neighboring village, a young girl who had been unable to speak from birth suddenly found she could communicate telepathically with everyone around her. In another, an elderly man discovered he could heal plants with just a touch, turning barren soil into fertile ground. The Valley of Lumo itself continued to evolve. The children born there showed abilities that seemed to expand with each generation. They could see energy fields as naturally as others saw physical objects, communicate across vast distances without speaking, and work with natural forces in ways that seemed magical to outsiders. Yet through all these changes, they maintained the humble wisdom that Subira had taught them. Each new discovery was seen not as a testament to their own power, but as a revelation of the potential that existed within all living things. They understood that true evolution wasn't about gaining abilities, but about remembering the connection that had always existed between all forms of consciousness. The annual gathering at Subira's transformation site became a global event, drawing people from all over the world who sought to understand this new way of being. But what they found wasn't a display of supernatural powers. It was a practical demonstration of what happens when human consciousness aligns with the wisdom of nature. During one such gathering, something unprecedented occurred. As the Lightkeepers led the assembled crowd in a meditation, the original seeds of light began to pulse with a familiar energy. Those present reported seeing a luminous form that reminded them of Subira, not as the white baboon he had been, but as the pure consciousness he had become. In that moment, everyone understood that Subira's transformation hadn't been an ending but a beginning. He had shown them a doorway, but it was their own evolution that had transformed the valley and was now transforming the world. Each person who awakened to their true potential became another seed of light, spreading the possibility of transformation to others. The story of the white baboon who became light had evolved from a local legend into a living blueprint for human evolution. But more than that, it had become a reminder that the most profound transformations often begin with the simplest acts of compassion, like a lonely widow taking in an abandoned baby baboon, or a community choosing to see beyond their fears, to embrace something extraordinary. As the sun set over the valley of Lumo that evening, casting its golden light across the transformed landscape, those gathered there understood that they were part of something much larger than themselves. They were participating in the next step of consciousness evolution, guided by the wisdom of a being who had chosen to walk among them in the form of a white baboon, teaching them that the boundaries between species, between consciousness and matter, between the possible and impossible, were only illusions waiting to be transcended by the power of love and understanding. And so, the legacy of Subira continued to grow and evolve, spreading from the valley of Lumo to transform the world in ways that truly left everyone speechless, not with shock or wonder, but with the profound recognition of their own unlimited potential. 20 years after Subira's transformation, the Valley of Lumo had become the epicenter of a global awakening. The seeds of light had spread to every continent, each one catalyzing unique expressions of enhanced consciousness. But it was in the original valley where the most extraordinary developments continued to unfold. On the morning of the 20th anniversary, young Jabari, named after the wise teacher who had first documented Subira's journey, made a discovery that would open yet another chapter in this remarkable story. While working with one of the original seeds of light, he noticed something no one had seen before: microscopic patterns within the crystal that seemed to form a kind of code. Using the enhanced perception that came naturally to his generation, Jabari began to decipher these patterns. What he found left him in awe. They were not just patterns, but a complete blueprint for the next stage of consciousness evolution. Subira had encoded his most profound teachings directly into the crystal structure of the seeds, waiting for humanity to be ready to understand them. The decoded information revealed something astonishing. The seeds of light were not just tools for enhancing individual consciousness. They were part of a larger design to create what Subira had called the network of living light. This network would connect all forms of consciousness on Earth, from the smallest microorganism to the largest ecosystems, in a harmonious web of awareness. As this understanding spread through the valley, new abilities began to emerge. The light keepers discovered they could access a kind of collective consciousness, sharing thoughts and experiences across vast distances. But more importantly, they could tap into the wisdom of the natural world in unprecedented ways. The valley's children demonstrated the most remarkable abilities. They could perceive the thoughts of trees, understand the complex languages of insects, and even communicate with the earth itself. One young girl showed she could see the memories stored in rocks, reading the geological history of the planet as easily as others read books. But the most profound changes were happening at the community level. The Valley of Lumo had evolved into what they called a living symphony, a place where human activity was completely harmonized with natural processes. Buildings grew organically from the earth, their structures adapting to the needs of both human and animal inhabitants. Gardens operated as conscious entities, responding to the collective needs of the community. The elephant herd that had been part of their journey from the beginning now participated in what became known as the Council of Species, regular gatherings where representatives from different life forms shared their unique perspectives on maintaining the valley's harmony. Through the enhanced consciousness that Subira had helped awaken, these interspecies communications became as natural as human conversation. During one such council, an elderly elephant matriarch shared a vision that stunned even the most experienced lightkeepers. She showed them how the seeds of light were affecting the planet's electromagnetic field, creating a new kind of energy network that could potentially heal environmental damage on a global scale. This revelation led to the formation of the Earth Healing Circles, groups of light keepers who worked with the seeds to restore damaged ecosystems around the world. Their success rates were extraordinary. Deserts bloomed, polluted waters cleared, and extinct species began to return to their former habitats. The baboon troops that had been touched by Subira's influence continued their own remarkable evolution. The white patches in their fur had developed into complex geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change with the phases of the moon. These new generations showed an unprecedented ability to bridge the gap between animal and human consciousness, becoming teachers in their own right. One particularly moving example of this evolution occurred when a group of these enhanced baboons traveled to a war-torn region of the continent. Their presence had such a profound effect on the local population that centuries-old conflicts began to resolve themselves. People who witnessed this transformation reported feeling a deep sense of peace and interconnection that transcended their previous differences. The seeds of light themselves continued to evolve. Each new generation of crystals seemed to carry additional information, as if Subira's consciousness was still actively guiding their development. Some began to exhibit new properties. One cluster developed the ability to purify water through mere proximity, while another could neutralize radiation and environmental toxins. The valley's technology had evolved far beyond conventional understanding. They had developed what they called consciousness-based technology, systems that operated through the direct interaction of human intention with natural forces. Their Homes were powered by crystalline matrices that responded to thought. Their transportation systems worked in harmony with gravity and earth energies, and their communication network operated through the same field of consciousness that connected all living things. Yet despite these extraordinary advances, the Valley of Lumo maintained its connection to the simple wisdom that had started their journey. They remembered Bibi Amara's compassion, which had set everything in motion, and Subira's teachings about the importance of love and understanding in any true transformation. The annual Transformation Festival, marking the anniversary of Subira's change, had become a global event that demonstrated this balance between advancement and humility. People from around the world gathered to witness the valley's achievements, but what touched them most deeply was not the display of extraordinary abilities. It was the palpable sense of harmony and connection that permeated every aspect of life. During one such festival, as thousands gathered around the original transformation site, something unprecedented occurred. The entire network of seeds of light began to pulse in perfect synchronization, creating a field of energy that was visible even to those without enhanced perception. In this field, many reported seeing visions of possible futures, not just for the valley, but for all of humanity. These visions showed a world where the boundaries between species had dissolved, where human consciousness had evolved to embrace all forms of life, and where technology and nature worked in perfect harmony. But more importantly, they showed how to achieve this future, not through dramatic changes, but through the same kind of simple, compassionate actions that had characterized Subira's life. As the visions faded, those present understood that they were witnessing more than just a demonstration of enhanced consciousness. They were seeing the next step in the evolution of life on Earth, an evolution that had begun with the unlikely friendship between a lonely widow and an albino baboon, and had grown into a movement that was transforming the very nature of existence. The Valley of Lumo had become more than just a place. It was a living example of what was possible when consciousness expanded beyond its traditional boundaries. Each day brought new discoveries, new abilities, and new understanding of the infinite potential that lay within all living things. Yet through all these extraordinary developments, they never forgot the simple truth that Subira had taught them, that the greatest transformations begin with love, that wisdom flows through all living things, and that the boundaries between different forms of consciousness are meant to be transcended through understanding and compassion. As dawn broke over the Valley of Lumo on the 25th anniversary of Subira's transformation, the world witnessed the culmination of everything he had set in motion. The network of living light had matured into a global consciousness field that connected all life in ways previously unimaginable. But what happened next would truly leave humanity speechless. The morning began with an extraordinary phenomenon. All the seeds of light around the world began resonating at the same frequency, creating a harmonic wave that could be felt by every living thing. In the Valley of Lumo, where it all began, the original transformation site became the focal point of an unprecedented gathering. Sophia, now in her final years, stood at the center of the gathering, surrounded by generations of lightkeepers. The elderly woman, who had once been Subira's most gifted student, had become a living bridge between his original teachings and their evolving manifestation. Beside her stood young Jabari, whose discovery of the crystal codes had unlocked new dimensions of understanding. What began as a simple commemoration transformed into something far more profound. The seeds of light didn't just pulse with energy. They began to create three-dimensional projections of information, revealing layers of wisdom that had been encoded within them, but had remained dormant until humanity was ready to receive them. These projections showed the next phase of evolution, not just for the valley or even humanity, but for Earth itself. They revealed how consciousness could transform matter at its most fundamental level, how different dimensions of reality could be accessed and integrated, and how the barriers between physical and spiritual existence could be transcended while maintaining physical form. The gathered community witnessed visions of possibilities that transcended their current understanding, cities that grew organically from the earth, technology that operated purely through consciousness and communication, systems that connected all forms of life in a seamless web of awareness. But more importantly, they saw how these changes could be implemented in harmony with all life. As the visions unfolded, something remarkable happened. The enhanced baboons, descendants of Subira's influence, began a complex dance that seemed to mirror the patterns being projected by the seeds. Their white-patterned fur glowed with an inner light, creating geometric forms that matched the sacred mathematics Subira had taught. The elephant herd, led by the descendants of those who had first worked with Subira, added their own resonance to the growing field of energy. Their deep rumbles created harmonic patterns that seemed to connect with something deep within the earth itself. Other animals joined in. Birds, insects, even plants began contributing their own frequencies to the emerging symphony. Then, in a moment that would be remembered for generations, the physical reality of the valley began to shift. The boundaries between different forms of consciousness became permeable, allowing everyone present to experience existence from multiple perspectives simultaneously. Humans could see through the eyes of eagles, feel the ancient wisdom of trees, and understand the complex social structures of the smallest insects. But this wasn't just a temporary experience. It was a permanent evolution of consciousness. The valley had become a gateway to a new way of being, where the artificial boundaries between species, between matter and spirit, between individual and collective consciousness, had dissolved into a harmonious whole. The Light Keepers discovered they could now access abilities that went beyond anything they had imagined. They could influence physical reality through pure intention, heal on a quantum level, and communicate instantaneously across any distance. But more importantly, they understood how to use these abilities in service of all life. The children of the valley, who had grown up with enhanced consciousness as their natural state, began demonstrating abilities that seemed miraculous even by the valley's standards. They could manipulate matter at will, access multiple dimensions simultaneously, and work with energy in ways that defied conventional physics. Yet through all these extraordinary developments, the simple wisdom that had started their journey remained at the core of everything. The compassion that had led Bibi Amara to rescue a frightened albino baboon, the patience with which Subira had taught his first students, and the understanding that true evolution comes through love and acceptance. These principles continued to guide their expansion. The Valley of Lumo had become more than a place of transformation. It was now a living template for the next stage of universal evolution. The seeds of light had matured into what they called consciousness catalysts, capable of awakening similar potential wherever they were planted. As the day drew to a close, Sophia shared her final insights with the gathered community. She revealed that Subira's transformation hadn't been an ending or even a beginning. It was part of an eternal cycle of evolution, a reminder that consciousness itself is infinite in its potential for growth and expression. The baboons with their glowing patterns, the elephants with their earth-shaking wisdom, the children with their miraculous abilities, all were living proof that consciousness knows no bounds when it's guided by love and understanding. The valley had become a living symphony of evolved consciousness, where every being contributed its unique note to the greater harmony of existence. As night fell over the valley, the seeds of light projected one final vision, a glimpse of the future that awaited not just humanity, but all life on Earth. It showed a world where consciousness had evolved beyond current understanding, where the boundaries between different forms of life had dissolved into a harmonious whole, and where the simple act of compassion that had started their journey had blossomed into a universal transformation. The story of the white baboon who became light had evolved into something far greater. It had become a living blueprint for the evolution of consciousness itself. The Valley of Lumo stood as a testament to what was possible when love transcended boundaries, when wisdom flowed freely between all forms of life, and when the simple act of showing compassion to a frightened creature could set in motion changes that would transform the very nature of existence. And so, the legacy of Subira continued to grow and evolve, spreading from the Valley of Lumo to transform not just the world, but the very fabric of reality itself. Those who witnessed these changes were indeed left speechless, not with shock or wonder, but with the profound recognition that they were participating in the greatest adventure possible, the eternal evolution of consciousness itself. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.